Hey, how's it going? This is Rob Turley, your host at Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. And today I've got a very special guest with me. His name is Tommy. He's awesome, huge data guy. That's why I'm a fan as well. We're going to be soon to be partners, and that's very exciting because big data is what drives sales and marketing, whether you like it or not. It's the truth. So, Tommy, if you could pretty much open up with yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Sure. So I come from a world before the word internet was even a word. So I grew up in business doing everything you do online, but the old school principles of marketing and sales. And then when I got online, learned all the digital techniques. I never liked any of the technology. And just from that point forward, just have been building out the tech to do sales online like I did offline.
Sure.
So using data to do that.
And how did you end up there? There's got to be a backstory.
Sure. So, like everything else, I own phone rooms. This was, let me start in the beginning. In 1989, I started selling software and just understanding the profit margin on software. It was all in the creation. And in those days, it wasn't like it's server-based it is today. So we were selling practice management software for doctors, clinics, small hospitals, practice management software. And then from there, just started getting into designing, mainly to sell, because I own phone rooms. And when the internet came around, all I ever kept thinking was, how do I make the phones ring using internet leads? I didn't know them as internet leads. And that's what got me online. Never liked any of the stuff that was there, and just, built out and developed my own technology. And from there, just never looked back, really. Started out in SEO.
I mean, you have to build what's not there, because if you're just waiting on someone else to innovate it, you could be waiting a lifetime. Might not even happen.
Here's the thing. When you think about the internet, I think a lot of people, there's a concept that we have in our company called new technology, new strategy, old principle, right? So tons of new technology. And because you have this new technology, you have a new way of winning. Strategy is a way to win. And then the principles in which, whether it's positioning or testing or, ICP, whatever it is, it's just using technology to do it. So when we built our technology out, we started with a basic definition of what a lead is: a qualified sales lead. And it has two definitions traditionally. It meets, it's determined that it meets the ICP profile, and it's sales ready. And for me, sales ready is just engagement, right? The level of behavior, the level of engagement.
The willingness to have a conversation in a business environment about a specific product or solution, or to solve a problem.
That's it. That's it. And then from there, so how do we utilize technology to do that? The principles don't change. So how do you create a qualified sales lead using an identity graph? And that's what we built.
So getting into that, what is an identity graph? So everybody here can understand it. I already know what it is. I know how it works. I know how,
So,
and
again,
that's no fun. I'm not going to just talk to you about something that nobody knows what the hell it is. So let's hear it.
11 years ago, we built a DSP, which basically was banner ads, right? Retargeting in those days. And it was like maybe 2 years in on that whole thing when you did programmatic. No one knew what programmatic was, but it was real-time bidding is what it was called in those days.
Yeah.
And so the way it worked is you drop a cookie and it sits on your browser. Now, it doesn't read your browser, but as you cruise the internet, I would have a cookie through a party, a vendor. And if you landed on that page, we could run an ad to you. And because we dropped that cookie, we knew what ad to show you. We program the software to do it, right? That was the basic fundamental of retargeting. But it introduced me to cookies and third party. And because of that, we built an identity graph. Then I started working with a company called Circulate and then Arbor. And what they were doing was they were dropping a cookie and they were connecting the email to that particular cookie. So what they would do is they would take the email and they would convert it to a cryptographic hash and put it in the code and place it on your browser. So it was just every time the pixel would fire, it would look to see if the browser was, the cookie was there. If it was, it went back to the graph and looked up the email. That's basically it, right? So Circulate got bought by LiveRamp.
And then it starts logging all of the information based off of what the cookie is relaying back to the identity graph and building it.
So if you take Tommy at Tommy.com and you put it into a lowercase format, let's say a SHA-256, you and I would get the exact same code. So a cryptographic cookie was basically taking the email and converting it, ABC123. If you took Tommy at Tommy.com, lowercase, that we'd get the same thing if we did SHA-56 or MD5 or SHA-1. Once I understood that, I was like, okay, now I could do people-based. I could target an individual, right? So resolving identity on a website visitor. And then because I own the DSP, we were also looking at URL level. So I was able to get my own targeting going. And we got into the automotive space. And that's really what started it. We started doing performance marketing. That's all we wanted to do, was be able to get paid per sale. And so we sold cars. We sold guaranteed contracts to auto dealerships and guaranteed a certain amount of sales. And what we would do is we would go in and we would build a manifest, right, of everybody we said that was going to buy. We took everybody, all the lost stuff, right? It was win, lost, and we didn't call it that, but we basically did it.
But what went wrong is far more important than what went right. And that's what people don't understand, because learning from the mistakes is the biggest thing, and understanding that, because even if someone looks like everything's going to be right, when you look at it from a meta scale or from a very granular perspective, after looking at some pattern recognition and everything, what went wrong and what went right, so closed won versus closed loss, are very similar in so many different ways. It's just a couple nuances that are the difference.
And so what we did was we built out who we thought, just using common sense, like mileage, lease information. We were tracking people at things like Edmunds and Kelley Blue Book and Auto Trader, and we had a lot of good, automotive behavior. So knowing who was in market for a car specifically, and then we would just deduct everybody they sold to in the last 5 years, everybody they serviced in the last 2, and everybody they had in their CRM for the last 60 days. And we would get a finite list, and we would market to that list across as many channels as we could. And it sounds funny, but when you know who to target, right, you can target to them in a whole different way, because you're doing 5 channels, 6 channels. Like, people ask me, like, how many channels? We kept going. I remember doing 4 successfully, and then somebody suggested a 5th channel, and I was like, all right, try it. I mean, it makes sense to try it. Our conversions went up.
Yeah, it's like what is it? 3 channels should be minimum. 4 channels is considered gold standard optimal. But if you can go over 4 channels, it's kind of ridiculous. The way that graphs out it's such a massive increase in comparison.
But it goes back to, when you know who to target, we changed the way we operated. So half of our ads didn't even have calls to action. All we did in the ad was we advertised the value proposition, we stated the value proposition, or we supported it with case study or JD Power Awards or whatever it was, any type of proof element.
It's the subconscious stuff that they're thinking about. It's validating their, it's giving them the emotional desire and decision to buy something responsibly, or something that would be a fit, or something that is good enough for what it is that they're looking for. And with that subconscious view, when they're offered it, they would finally want to buy it without it being in their face saying, buy this, buy this, buy this. It's pretty much validating the idea in their head subconsciously. So when it hits them with the buy this advertisement, the willingness is there.
For us, we got into the psychology of it. And when you think about somebody who is going to purchase something, there's 2 things they have to believe about the company: that you're going to be who you say you are, you're going to be reliable, and you're going to be credible. You do what you say, and you can do what you say. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And so, that you can and you will. This is MechLabs 101. MechLabs.com is probably one of the best digital websites. I couldn't recommend them more along, and everything in terms of principles and concepts and basics. So think about this, just a basic fundamental. You can only take action on what you remember.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
You've
seen how much are they going to forget? What, 80 to 90% of anything they see.
Right. You've seen 100 ads in the last 24 hours. Name one. Right. So by having 5 or 6 channels and not wasting any advertising on bad prospects, because we modeled so accurately, we were able to saturate the people who had the highest probability, build trust, prove that we were reliable. Right. Because anytime you run an ad to somebody, the promise of the ad, if let's say I say, click here, watch a video, and you get to the page and you have to go look at it, I'm not reliable. right? But if they don't have to search for it and they find it and it's right there, well, then that doesn't mean I'm going to get any credibility, but that I did what I said I would do. And then every value exchange thereafter, I can ask for a larger, so the next one I'll ask for an email. I'll ask for a full record. So you convert all that attraction into action through a conversation. If I know who to have a conversation with, that's half the battle. And then what we do is we overlay all of the in-market and site visitor. So I know who, I know when, and because I know where they are on the buyer's journey with data, I know how to close them.
Right, exactly. And then tying that into an approach of understanding which person, because that's great for B2C, because what are people pretty much built to do is to impulse buy. The consumer market loves to impulse buy. I saw a study, I forget who the hell did the study, but it's somewhere around 80% of all purchases are an impulse buy in the consumer market. 80% of all purchases made in the consumer market, which is insane. I need to look up where the hell that statistic came from. But if you were to look it up, you'd find it eventually. Anyway, from that, the difficulty is in the B2B market because businesses do not impulse buy. That is a fact. They don't. They make a calculated decision. It's calm, it's cool, it's collective, and they need to make sure it's the right decision. And there's more than one person buying into it, and directly advertising to each of them the way they need to be advertised to is incredibly difficult and extremely expensive. And advertisements do not affect people in business as well as they do consumers because they don't have that impulse behind it. Sure, it needs to leave that emotional reaction to it, the reliability factor, the confidence factor, all that stuff. But then it's about having a human conversation. Over 97% of all business that's done in the B2B space is done through a salesperson or a human encounter. People don't buy things unless they're able to speak to an individual or a person or an expert in order to make that decision. So how do we tie this into a way of understanding, okay, now that we know who, it's which people should we start with that we will resonate with best so that we can understand the person who's the highest probability of becoming the champion in the deal.
So for us, we look at the behavior, right? Don't tell me what you value. Let me watch what you do and I'll know exactly what you value, right?
That's right.
So for me, having the ideal customer profile, when I start to resolve identity on people who come to their website, think about it. If 30 to 40% of your web traffic is bot fraud, I'm resolving the identity on bot fraud. You sell, SAP software and, a school teacher from Queens is on your website. That's not a prospect. Now, in the past, we would resolve that identity and people would market to that person, whether it was retargeting blindly or even using our data in the beginning.
It doesn't matter. And that's just dumping money into a pit. You're lighting it on fire, dumping it into a pit and lighting the whole pit on fire, covering it and soaking it in gasoline, keep feeding it. And by feeding a fire, it makes it burn brighter, but it burns for a way shorter period of time.
So for us, it was really simple. When we look at the behavior, we use that to qualify, right? So we have a profile. Right. So if the behavior matches like keyword search or on our website, etc., we know this is behavior because it matches the previous behavior of previous buyer. Right. So if I have all the chronological behavior you commit on the way to buying a car, let's say I go back 120 days, then I'm going to be able to look at your behavior in concert with everybody else's behavior and see what the commonality is, what the pattern is. Right. Once I see what the behavior in common is, I'm going to know what the weight is, and then everything that goes with that. So we were always modeling the behavior. Once we added the ICP, we had a qualified sales lead. That's our dual matrix. Now we're going into personality type of the person to understand how to close them, connecting the right salesperson to the right lead, etc. Just everything you can do to be more effective, more efficient with a lead.
Right, exactly. And that is why we are partnering up. Because adding that in-depth ideal customer persona will not only save money for the person who's buying it or the person that's being serviced, the client, because if they're on target, there's none of that, keep trying until, the cows come home, spending money along the way. It's going to start at a much better place. Sure, there's going to be refinement from there, but then it's going to start at a much better place with better results in a shorter period of time, which is awesome. And that's something that is really, it's the future of selling. It's the future of advertising, marketing, all that stuff. So if you could start where you should be starting, instead of going through pretty much the entire database of the world to figure out where it belongs, and taking a shot at it, it's going to be in a very specific niche of precisely where it should be, and other niches that follow. So adding that level of preciseness is going to be a game changer. How much do you think, in your opinion, would it save when it comes to the revenue of that a business is spending on advertising to add this layer to it?
That's simple. So for me, we can cut a cost per click. So if you think about, sorry, I spilled something while I'm talking to you here, trying to answer my sister on the text. So I apologize. So when a customer comes into us, the first thing we do is we model out their conversion. Once you model out the conversion, we're never going to run an ad to the wrong person, first and foremost. Number two, once we get the model, whatever I don't have in terms of behavior, because I don't have every single behavior, I can go to Google and Facebook and ask them to model it out even better than what I can. But the difference is when I give somebody a pure targeting set, I'm going to lower the cost per click by on average, about 50 to 75%. So lowering cost per click, I'm lowering CAC. And anybody who's had the last 8 weeks, listen, it's been the number one conversation we have with everybody.
Well, yeah, it's lowering cost per click, but then it's also making it so the clicks that do happen are going to result in a higher probability or a higher rate of success, a higher rate of conversion.
If you think about it, all Google is a relevance engine. So if they're selling you 100 impressions and they're selling me 100 impressions, and you get 1 click and I get 2, right? I'm twice as relevant because they don't care about you. They don't care about the ad. They care about the person seeing the ad because that's how they make their money. That's what relevance is to them.
They even have you, if you don't want to see the ad, it says, is this ad relevant to you? It literally asks you that question as a consumer. Then you click no or yes. So the reason relevance is important, to continue that, all they care about is relevance because they want to make sure that the content that people are looking up is relevant. So think about it. Do you want your first page of Google to be everything that is relevant to what you're looking at based off of keywords? Do you want to type in a couple of keywords or just anything in the search bar where it's going to come up with the thing that you meant for it to come up with, or the thing that's most relevant to that? That's why it's so important to them.
Let's talk about, let's just keep it simple for a second. Let's talk about profile, right? Inside a profile, you can segment out every single solitary person I've ever sold. And even then, there are segments that are more profitable than others, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing with behavior.
Oh, perfect example. Insurance, the average is $24 a click.
Say it again.
$24 a click in the insurance world.
Exactly. Right. So if you now know the right prospect and you know the exact time that prospect should get an ad because you know their behavior matches the closing behavior of a previous buyer. So if I match the profile from a demographic, psychographic, firmographic standpoint, and the behavior matches, like statistically, what's the odds that I'm going to get 30 to 40% of them if I've got a decent message that I'm going to get them to click?
30 to 40% with a decent that's astronomically higher than what people would get usually.
Right. And I'm saying to you, we get people who do better than that because think of it like this. Let's say you're getting 2 out of 100. Let's do simple math. That means 98 people said no. Now, what if I can distill out some of those 98 by just profiling them out? They're bad people. They don't fit the ICP targeting. I go from 2 out of 100 to 2 out of 50. Right? Now I'm 4%. What does Google do when you get a higher click-through rate? They lower your cost per click. So perfection is not always adding more. It's removing. When you're done removing things, that's when you're perfect. And so I look at the way in which we use data. The word I keep settling on is distillation. The more times you go through, you're removing all of the bad ads. You can rewrite. And by the way, we do tons of testing. If you built me 2,000 segments, our software automatically builds out every funnel unique for every segment. We use AI to write all the copy, all the content, all the creative. We could build thousands of segments in any one campaign. Not a problem. Piece of cake. But where it starts to get really unique is when we start doing all the testing. And from that, we're utilizing the concept of behavior to figure out where they are in the buyer's journey, whether or not they are in the buyer's journey. Let's start there, right? Are they actually somebody who we should be targeting? And do they have the behavior? They have to have both. And if they do, they're sales ready, right? It's a whole different campaign. And if they fit the ICP, but they don't have all the behavior we want, they're marketing ready. They're, lead nurture as opposed to sales ready, right? They need to be nurtured.
That's the difference between a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead.
Now, what we do for a living is we do all of the done for you, rerun all the ads on a performance basis for all those prospects, whether they're in lead nurture or sales nurture. And then we also do on the post side after a sale, we do lifetime value. So here, let's say you bought from me, Rob, right? You're on my graph. Every time you log into my software, I send you an email, I drop a new cookie, I'm tracking you. I know everything you're going to buy going forward. So that's the other change of direction. You don't normally think of it this way, but most companies think they can only upsell and grow their lifetime based on products that are similar to what I sell, right? There has to be something ancillary, something that's a lateral, right? A before and after product. Guess what? If you sold cars for a living, you could sell people car insurance. Easy. That's a lateral. But what if you sold them life insurance? See, Amazon sells socks, books, cars, insurance, pharmaceuticals. The future is about the relationship, right? What I think of when I think of targeting, it's taking the 208 million unique adults 18 or above in the United States and narrowing it down to who should get your time, focus, and attention.
And that's what people don't get either. That's the problem with the sales process in the B2B space, is that they're so hooked on more. They think, okay, sales aren't going that great. We need to double the sales staff, double the emails, double the cold calls, double the everything, double, when adding to it is not making it better at all. Your cost is increasing astronomically. Sure, you'll get some growth, but that's not the point. The point is a removal process. It's all the noise, all the garbage. And by dealing with all that noise and garbage and adding to it like that, you're making the market worse for everyone. Everyone.
Rob, stay, because I think, and I'm going to say this, you and I have built this technology to do these really cool things. And people who listen to this hear the deep technology, and trust me, technology is how we carry out all the old principles, all the time-tested, proven things you've always done in marketing and sales. So here, let me ask you a question. If you had a salesman who had less leads, he could focus more about the conversation he's about to have.
The relationship.
Right. Know more about the company, know more about the person. So when they ask you a question, you're like, oh, shit, I didn't know you did that. Well, how could you on God's green earth ask me to sign a contract when you don't know that I do these things? You didn't do 5 minutes of research. Why? Because you're banging out appointments that absolutely have no value, will not close.
It's not about more appointments. And if VCs could get that through their thick fucking skull, it would be a different world.
So I'm going to tell you something. I love to define words. So think of AI, a subset of AI is machine learning, right? And then subset of machine learning is deep learning, right?
God, I went all the way down the rabbit hole in deep learning with the project that I've done before. My God.
No doubt. And by the way, where we're going should scare the shit out of people, because the amount of data we're utilizing, we are actually venturing into deep learning territory, right?
We use a deep learning program assisting boosted trees.
We just started getting into some deep learning projects. The truth is, we've been in machine learning land for a long, long time. You have to have large quantities to be able to, and speed and velocity. There are things that people don't understand about data. And so I want to keep it really, really simple. If I'm only targeting people that match the profile of my previous buyers, whether that's ICP, meaning demographic, firmographic, psychographic, right? Because we do all three, and they have the behavior. What's the statistical odds of somebody matching the previous demographic profile and having not 1, not 2, not 10, 20 behaviors, 30 behaviors similar to a previous buyer? It's statistically, we're going to win lotto every day for a year.
It's not impossible, but it's quite improbable.
It's quite improbable. So let's just think about it logically. So if I could say to you, your sales staff can make 150 calls a week, and instead of getting 1 legitimately good call, I got them 5. Let's just say I did just that. Now, what if instead of to get those 5, instead of making 150 phone calls, they had to make 20, 50? They could focus better. Listen, at the end of the day, people buy from people, right?
Oh
So
God, that literally bleeds from me. Yeah.
there's 3 things that, let's go back to old principles. There are 3 things for price sensitivity in B2B, right? The third one, everyone knows the price, how much it costs, and how it's going to affect the company, ROI, et cetera. The third one is, how is it going to reflect on me personally?
That's what people don't get. It's like, oh, this is how it's going to benefit your business. This is how it reflect on your business. No, how is it going to benefit the individual human being that you're speaking to? Will they get a promotion? Will
Again,
they get praise? Will they get a raise?
let's keep it simple. We just came off a time period where people were afraid to lose their jobs, right? In the beginning of COVID, think about it. People were scared they were going to lose their job. No one was buying anything because we didn't know if a dollar was worth $1 million. Like, you had to hold on to everything. Everything got paused. Everything that was pipeline got turned off. No one did it. So if you think about it, somebody who's in charge of going out and doing the research, they have to come back with an answer. They can't say, well, guess what? I didn't find anybody. They find somebody else to go do the search, right? So they're going to find companies. When you think about marketing, I want you to think about conversations. People buy from people. So you have to build a relationship before you sell. How do you build a relationship? The same way you do offline, you start a conversation. When you run an ad to somebody and they come to your page, that's a conversation. That's the part about digital people miss. Even though you're listening to my video or watching, anybody who's listening to this now, this isn't a monologue where I'm talking and you're not communicating with me. They're listening and they're having a mental conversation. So when you attract somebody to your page because of our targeting, right, to have a conversation, to nurture that relationship, how do you convert all of that attraction into action? It's simple. You have to help people, educate them, give them an alternative, and offer, make a recommendation and offer an alternative to that recommendation.
Always give them a back out too.
Yeah, exactly. Because then I'm being genuine. I can talk all about me, but if I tell you all the alternatives, these are I didn't invent any of this stuff. This has been around forever. Everything I just said, if it sounded clever and smart, they're all time-tested, proven.
You can read a sales book from like the 50s and it'll have that.
Absolutely. Listen, why did people in the old days, when I was a kid, we used to buy albums for a penny, get 10 albums for a penny, right? All those clubs. Why? Because anybody who purchased was a lead, right? They sold books the same way. Anybody who bought the dollar book was a lead. The first sale is just for you and I to have that conversation. If you take that to your content and you build a relationship by having a conversation with your with your content, if I know who to target, I can have a conversation with them anytime I want, anywhere I want, on any topic I want, as often I want. And because I own and control the technology and the targeting for this, I can have this conversation at Google. I could have it at Facebook. I could have it on YouTube. I could have it on, you want me to show you ads on television? You want me to show you audio ads, play you audio ads? I can target you anyway. Pinterest, you name it, Twitter. The part that people don't understand, the power of first-party data. When you take a sale that you've made, what people don't understand is they are sitting on a gold mine. There's a profile in that client list. Look, old school stuff. Who's the easiest person to sell to? Somebody you've already sold to, right? Because they've had a good experience. They had a good experience. And typically that second sale, the value exchange can be larger than the first one. Old school principles. How do you do that online? Well, if I give you a good digital experience by giving you a video, what's the likelihood I'm going to get you to maybe opt in for a sequence, right? Maybe watch, come to a live webinar, maybe download a white paper or whatever it might be. The idea is every time I can communicate with somebody, to me, those conversations are what create clients. If you think about it, you're digitally talking. What the data does is it allows me to talk to the right people and only the right people, segments them so I know how to talk to them. I know how to communicate to them. There's another concept that's coming out called value footprint. So when you build out your segments, Rob, people are not only making unique content and unique copy, right? And unique creative, they're also taking the value proposition for that particular segment, and if it needs to be modified, meaning change the value footprint, that's one-to-one.
Yeah, and it's all about being relevant and being relevant at scale. It's different, and you can't personalize at scale. Anybody who said you could do that that's a bold lie. It really is. There's no such thing as personalization at scale because it's about the individual person, research, and all that good stuff. But being relevant at scale is taking small groupings of people, not large ones. If you try to speak to everybody, you speak to nobody, or you speak to like 10 people out of 50,000. That's the problem. The solution is talking to small sets of 150 people, 220 people, maybe 500 people, maybe 36 people, and then building a message that resonates with not only them as a human being, that's the first step, but then also making it a variable of industry, speaking the language of the industry, and then taking company size or revenue value, whatever it may be, to speak to the pain. Because think about a custom dev company, custom dev shop. Let's use that as an example because there's literally a quadrillion of them on this planet. The people need to stop founding those because there's enough. Stop it. Just end this nonsense right now. We don't need more. All right. But so custom dev shop. All right. Now, if we have that, and that's like the grouping of people that you're speaking to, okay, you're speaking to the CEO. That's a specific kind of person. You're going to build messaging around that. Now, you're speaking to custom development. That's the sub industry that you're speaking to. Great. That's super specific. Now, a custom dev shop that's a size of 10 to 50 people, they have a very specific set of pains, I guarantee it. And it's gonna pretty much copy and paste across the market. No matter which company, they're gonna have really the same set of pains. They don't have enough people working there. They can only work with so many clients. Their advertising is pretty much non-existent. They don't have any salespeople. You know what I mean? It's that. It's obvious. Now, if you take a segment of there's 51 to 200 people working at the company, that's a whole different set of pains. They may have some salespeople, but their sales process isn't that great. Their version of marketing is just spamming people's inboxes. They are able to work with and get pretty good deals, and they can service quite a few people. But then again, they can't get the large mid-market contracts. That's a different set. Now, if you look at 1,001 to 5,000 people working at a custom dev shop, that is a whole different realm of pain points that come with that. And usually it's operational issues and all that good stuff. So you're going to speak to that pain separately, but you're going to speak to the CEO the same way. You're going to speak to the industry language the same way, but you're going to speak to their pain in a totally different way and give them a different value proposition for that specific thing.
When you take every individual and communicate with them on an individual level.
Or it should at least feel that way.
Well, I mean, listen, you want to know what the greatest experience you can give somebody online is? An actually really good experience. Like, there's no fucking trick to it. Pardon my language, but it's like, there is no fucking trick to treating people right. If I want your business and you're going to hand me a couple of $1 million or $500,000 or a $50,000 contract, and I don't know squat about you, I don't know what your problem is, I don't know exactly how to fix it, then how could you ever give me that contract? But if I know who you are, if I know who you
selling
are,
is not selling a solution. It's about helping to solve a problem. That's what people don't get. You're not selling a solution. You're helping them solve a problem. And until people can understand that, it's going to be very difficult to do so.
There's a good book that came out, and this is a sales technique that's been around a long time. It's called gap selling, right? So how I do it, I use a version of it. Same thing, box close, different ways in which you can accomplish the same thing. Present state, future state.
Yep.
Right? Tell me where you are, where you want to get to. It's the truth. How serious?
Next to why, by when. That's it.
How serious are you about getting here? What's driving it? What's the motivation? Because I always want to know the motivation, because that is the single greatest thing you need to learn before you sell anybody anything. You need to know their motivation. That's an old school thing. And if anybody can name the author who wrote the book on that, I'll give you a year's worth of site visitor for free. But the idea is simple. If I know what motivates you, I have one question: where you are, and you're serious about getting here, you're absolutely committed to it. Is what you're doing that got you here going to get you here?
Because and no, it's not.
Then I would like the opportunity to show you how I can bridge the gap. That's the premise. Okay. Now, how I sell this to people is really simple. Your staff is super talented. I haven't done anything but kept my head down on developing this and running campaigns to prove it out, proof concept. There's no way that they understand this at the level that we do. It's not a knock on them.
Oh, yeah, no. People ask us how it works. It's a trick question. They want to know how it's applied because, my God, if I start explaining it, 30 seconds in, their eyes glaze over. They have no idea what we're talking about anymore. Yeah.
So here's what I say to people. Every day, you get people that come to your website, that visit your website, that are closable, that you never get a chance to speak to. Let me show you how I'm going to resolve the identity of these deep in the funnel prospects. Now, how do I know that these are hot prospects? Not just because they're on your website, but because they match the demographic, psychographic, firmographic profile
And geographic.
every other person you just sold 50 million to over the last 12 months.
And that's going to be a very small percentage of people on your website. People also make the mistake where, sure, if they can identify the people on the website, they think that every single piece of traffic isn't a potential opportunity when really it's going to be 1% or less.
I don't know about 1%. How do you come to the 1%?
So that's based off of mixed statistics of B2C and B2B. So that's probably a mess. In B2B, I don't know the hard statistic.
You know what? We should actually do a test on that, you and I, because
Oh yeah, we'd be able to get a really good data set on that too.
I think we could quantify it. I think it's a lot higher from our experience, and not to contradict you, but from tracking people's website, I would say, and this is personal, I think it's 50 to 60% of your website traffic is complete fraud.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well,
Okay.
there was a study from another AI company that does a lot of big data analytics on this stuff. Is they came to the conclusion, this is after I think it's a couple tens of millions of visitors and everything like that. They came to the conclusion that inbound traffic from either search engines or ads is 86 to 91% bots.
So if anyone wants to Google this, the New York Times put their interns on this. They went to every website that they
Jesus
ran ads
Christ,
on,
that must have been a hell of a.
and they decided yes or no, and they turned off, like, I don't know what the percentage was, but they turned off tons of websites, and their conversions didn't go down because those websites were bot fraud sites. And so again,
Sounds right.
do simple math. If 50% of your website is bullshit, garbage, meaning just bots, so you're getting 5,000, you're down to 2,500. Now, of that, I'd be willing to make you a bet that half of that does not fit the profile.
Yep.
If I'm being generous, 50%. I think it's a lot higher than that. Where I get clients who get like, well, I go, I'll tell you what, if you want to work the percentage of people that don't fit the profile, let's make a bet, a gentleman's bet. If none of them close, I get $1,000. If one of them close, I give you $2,000. So you have an incentive to try and close these. I win that bet every time.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing for us too. Let's say you get a lead list from Zoom Info and you're putting in your basic criteria for the ICP. Oh, how many of those are going to be opportunities? So if you ran it through a tech, it would eliminate probably 95 to 99% of them. Oh, well, all of them might be an opportunity. Go ahead, try to sell them. How many are you going to close? Tell me right now. Maybe 1%. Oh, you guessed it. So that's the thing, is that people don't get that. If you have the ICP set, how many people within that ICP, if you get real specific, are going to be an opportunity? Well, from our experience, between 25 to 40%.
Let's do me a favor. Let's go back a second and talk about an identity graph. Picture the graph in the rows and the columns. The rows are the people, Tom Lee Antonio, and then the first column is a cookie that's connected to the second column, his email, right? So that's the basic fundamental of a third-party cookie, right? And Google has kicked the can. They control 60% of the browser market. We're good through next year. Everyone's working on an alternative. And there's some probabilistic, but that's the old-fashioned cookie. You're good. It won't work on iOS, but it'll work on everything else. So now you have at least a percentage of the market that you could deterministically say, if they land on the website, I know who it is by email. Now you have maids coming in. So I have maids. So the third column is the maid. Well, I get the maid. I'm able to get back the other information like the name, where they work. So that's what people don't understand, how a graph works. Once you have the behavior with the cookie or a matrix.
It's a matrix. It's if the things line up and 2 points intersect, then that entire row is considered valid.
So I bring in anywhere between, on a bad month, 90 million unique people on the cookie, unique, multiple times per month, to about 130, 135 million a month. right? So our graph is constantly being built, and it decays just as quick. That's why we bring them in multiple times, right? And we use IP address through a third party. We do some probabilistic, and I don't want to get into that, but there's some really cool things we do with modeling to know which ones were right and which ones were wrong. That's the problem with probabilistic. Some of them are right, some of them are wrong. Which ones are right because of profiling.
And you need to cross-reference at all times, because if you're not cross-referencing and making assumptions, your accuracy and sustainability goes out the window.
So we're able to do that, with, and again, pick up 20, 30%. So let's say 50% of a website traffic, I can resolve the identity on. And half of that is going to be bot fraud. And half of that is not going to fit the profile. So you're looking at 12.5% of your website traffic. You said 1, I think it's more like 10 to 15. Think about that. And theoretically, if I'm right and you knew who those 12.5% were, would that change the way you market? And when I show that to people, they're like, there's no way. And I'm like, well, you're only getting a 2% click-through rate, or a 5% click-through, 10% click-through. That means 90% are not clicking. Are you telling me that all of them say no because of the messaging? There's only 2 reasons somebody doesn't buy or click, or whatever the marketing question is.
If you enjoyed this episode, follow Down the Rabbit Hole podcast for new episodes weekly on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, and YouTube. If you'd like to apply to be featured on the podcast or recommend a featured guest, please feel free to email us at theteam@whiterabbitintel.com.